"You don't have anything," my daughter screamed, her face contorted with rage, spittle flying from her lips as she towered over me in her designer living room. The words hung in the air like shrapnel, meant to wound, meant to diminish. I just smiled, a small, knowing smile, and opened my banking app. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. I never planned to reveal my secret. Not like this, anyway. For 76 years, I'd lived by my father's principle. A man's wealth is measured by his character, not his wallet. But sometimes life forces your hand. Sometimes dignity demands a response. My name is David Williams. For over 5 decades, I worked jobs that most people with college degrees would consider beneath them. Security guard at the local high school, where I patrolled hallways while students snickered at my uniform. Landscaper for wealthy families who barely acknowledged my presence as I trimmed their hedges under the summer sun. Even after retirement, I drove for a rideshare company, shuttling drunk college kids and business people who took calls as if I weren't there. But every dollar had a purpose. Every early morning and late night had meaning. Her name was Sarah. From the moment the nurse placed my baby girl in my arms, I made a promise. She would have opportunities I never had. My wife, Eleanor, felt the same way. We'd both grown up poor, the kind of poor where Christmas meant one present and dinner sometimes meant just beans and rice, the kind of poor that follows you like a shadow even after you've escaped it. "David," Eleanor would say while we paid our bills at the kitchen table, "we need to put a little extra away for Sarah's college fund this month." And somehow, we always did. One less dinner out, one more weekend picking up extra shifts. Small sacrifices that accumulated over years. Eleanor didn't live to see Sarah graduate. Cancer took her when our daughter was just 16, a brutal, swift disease that left me a widower with a heartbroken teenager. The medical bills nearly broke us financially, but I refused to let them break our dream. "I promise you, Ellie," I whispered at her bedside in those final days, holding her thin hand in mine. "I'll make sure she gets everything we planned." And I kept that promise. Sarah attended private school, paid for with installment plans that kept me awake at night. She went to a good university, thanks to a loan I took out against my modest retirement savings. She graduated law school at the top of her class. A moment that brought tears to my eyes as I sat alone in the audience, Eleanor's empty seat beside me filled only with memories. When Sarah joined a prestigious law firm in the city, I felt nothing but pride. My little girl, now a powerful attorney with a corner office and a salary that dwarfed anything I'd ever earned. Mission accomplished, as they say. I didn't realize then that success would change her. Or maybe it just revealed something that had always been there, something I'd been too blind to see. The first time I noticed the shift was at a dinner celebrating her first major case win. I showed up wearing my best outfit, pressed slacks and a button-down shirt I'd owned for 15 years. "Dad," she hissed as I entered the upscale restaurant, "couldn't you have worn something newer?" I looked down at my clothes, suddenly aware of every worn edge and faded spot. "This is my good shirt, sweetheart." She introduced me to her colleagues with a tight smile. "This is my father. He worked in security." The pause before my profession hung in the air like an apology. That night marked the beginning of a slow erosion. Our weekly calls became monthly. Her visits home dwindled to holidays, then just Christmas, then not even that. When we did speak, she'd tell me about her vacations to Europe, her new car, her growing investment portfolio, all while I sat in my small apartment, counting pennies until my next Social Security check. "You should really talk to a financial advisor, Dad," she'd say, as if my problem was poor money management, rather than simply not having enough. "My guy is amazing. He could help you make better decisions." No, what Sarah didn't know, what I never told her, was that I had been making financial decisions, good ones, careful ones, for decades. It started small, back when Eleanor was still alive. $20 a month into a mutual fund, $50 whenever we could spare it. After she died, I lived even more frugally than before. My co-workers thought I was just a sad widower who didn't care about nice things anymore. They never suspected I was building something, brick by invisible brick. I drove the same car for 20 years. I lived in the same two-bedroom house we'd bought in the 1980s. I packed lunches instead of buying them. And every month, without fail, I invested a portion of my income, sometimes small, sometimes larger, into a diverse portfolio that grew steadily over decades. I lived by a simple rule: live like you're poor, invest like you're rich. The power of compound interest became my silent partner. Not that Sarah would have cared to hear about it. By her 30s, she'd married Mark, an ambitious businessman with a taste for luxury and status. They built a mansion in an exclusive neighborhood, bought vacation properties, and traveled extensively. Their lifestyle was splashed across social media for everyone to admire. My invitations to visit became increasingly rare and painfully conditional. "Dad, if you come for Thanksgiving, please don't tell those stories about your childhood. They're so depressing. Dad, we're having some important people over. Maybe wear that new sweater I bought you for Christmas." I complied, swallowing my dignity with each request. After all, wasn't this what I wanted? My daughter successful, comfortable, secure. If the price was my pride, so be it. Until that fateful evening, 3 months ago. The invitation to dinner at their home came unexpectedly. Sarah hadn't called in weeks, and suddenly she wanted me to come over for a special family discussion. I should have sensed the trap, but hope is a powerful drug for a lonely old man. Their house was as immaculate as always, a showcase of wealth with its marble floors and soaring ceilings. Family photos adorned the walls, though I noticed there were fewer of me with each passing year. Mark greeted me with his typical backslapping false heartiness, ushering me into their formal dining room where several other people waited. "Dad, you remember our friends the Johnsons? And this is our attorney, Mr. Reynolds." An attorney at a family dinner. My stomach tightened with apprehension. The conversation remained superficial through appetizers, discussions of recent vacations, and neighborhood gossip. But as the main course arrived, Sarah cleared her throat and fixed me with what I recognized as her courtroom smile. "Dad, we asked you here because we need to discuss something important." Mark slid a document across the table. "It's a simple transfer of property, David. Just need your signature." I looked down at the paperwork, adjusting my reading glasses. It was a deed transfer for the small plot of land my father had left me, about 5 acres of undeveloped property outside the city, my last connection to him, and the only thing of value I officially owned. "Why would I sign this?" I asked, genuinely confused. Sarah's smile tightened. "Mark's new business venture needs capital. The bank requires collateral beyond our current assets. It's just a formality. We'd buy it back from you once things take off." "Which is guaranteed," Mark added quickly. "We're looking at triple-digit returns within 18 months. I gently pushed the document back across the table. "I'm sorry, but I can't sign this. That land was my father's legacy to me." Sarah's smile vanished. "Dad, be reasonable. It's just sitting there empty. You've never done anything with it. It's not about using it. It's about keeping my father's memory alive." Mark laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "David, with all due respect, sentimentality doesn't pay bills. This is business. My answer is still no." Sarah stood suddenly, her chair scraping across the floor. "Why are you being so difficult? It's not like you have anything else. No savings, no investments, nothing to show for your entire life except that worthless piece of dirt." The Johnsons shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "Sarah," I said quietly, "that's enough." "No, it's not enough." Her voice rose, years of hidden contempt suddenly breaking through. "You've never understood money or success. You've wasted your life working meaningless jobs, living in that embarrassing little house, wearing the same clothes until they fall apart. And now you're being stubborn about the one thing that could actually help your family." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at me, waiting for a response to this humiliating tirade. I could feel the weight of their judgment. Poor old David, whose successful daughter had outgrown him. That's when something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. Years of swallowed pride and quiet dignity demanded a voice. "You don't have anything!" Sarah finally screamed, her face flushed with rage. I smiled that small, knowing smile, reached for my phone, a basic model Sarah had often mocked, and opened my banking app. Without a word, I passed the phone to her. The screen displayed my investment portfolio, $2,106.12. Sarah's face drained of color. She stared at the number, then at me, then back at the screen. This can't be right." "It is," I said quietly. "I've been investing since before you were born, 45 years of consistent contributions and compound interest." Mark snatched the phone, his eyes widening. "There's another account here. Offshore investments." "Yes, another $800,000 or so in international funds. And I own a rental property in Arizona that generates about $3,000 a month in passive income." The attorney, Mr. Reynolds, cleared his throat. "Mr. Williams, if I may ask, why have you been living so modestly with these kinds of resources?" I took back my phone, feeling strangely calm. Because wealth isn't for showing off. It's for security and freedom. Eleanor and I agreed on that a long time ago. Sarah sank back into her chair. "But all these years, you let me think." "I let you think what you wanted to think," I replied. "You never asked about my finances. You just assumed that because I lived simply, I had nothing." Mark's face had taken on a calculating look. "David, this changes everything about our potential partnership. With your assets, we could—" "No," the word came out firm and final. "There will be no partnership." I stood up, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. "Sarah, your mother and I raised you to value people for who they are, not what they have. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that lesson." "Dad, I didn't mean—" "It was just the heat of the moment." "No, it wasn't. It was honesty. Perhaps the most honest you've been with me in years." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "You know, the real irony is that much of this money was meant for you, your inheritance. But now I'm not so sure you deserve it." The following week was a blur of calls and texts from Sarah, apologies, justifications, attempts to re-establish herself in my good graces. Mark called too, suddenly interested in rebuilding our relationship and putting family first. I didn't respond to either of them. Instead, I visited my attorney and rewrote my will. Most of my estate would now go to a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, young people who understood the value of education because they'd had to work for it. The kind of students who wouldn't take opportunity for granted. A smaller portion would go to my caretaker, Emily, a kind-hearted nursing student who visited me weekly, helped with groceries and household tasks, and actually listened when I spoke. She showed me the respect that Sarah had long since abandoned. When Sarah discovered my decision through the family grapevine, she was furious. She hired lawyers, threatened to contest the will, claimed I was mentally incompetent. But each legal avenue proved fruitless. I was of sound mind, and my finances were meticulously documented. "You can't do this," she said, during her last unannounced visit to my home. "I'm your daughter, your only child." "Yes, you are," I replied. "And I still love you, Sarah, but love without respect isn't enough, not anymore." She left in tears that day. I haven't seen her since. Last week I received a letter, handwritten, not typed. Sarah's penmanship, once so familiar. "Dad," she wrote, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about who I've become, about what I've lost. Not the money, though I won't pretend that doesn't hurt, but your respect. Mum would be ashamed of me, and rightfully so. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I understand now what you were trying to teach me all along. I don't know if her words are sincere or just another attempt to secure her inheritance. Time will tell. Genuine change doesn't happen overnight, and trust, once broken, is difficult to repair. What I do know is this: wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in dignity, in quiet confidence, in the respect you command, not through intimidation, but through character. When Sarah screamed that I had nothing, she was wrong. I had everything that truly matters. And in that moment of revelation, as she stared at the numbers on my phone screen, I hope she began to understand the difference between having money and being rich. Some lessons come at a high price. This one cost Sarah an inheritance, but perhaps gained her something more valuable, the realization that true worth can't be calculated on a balance sheet. As for me, I've started traveling, first to the Grand Canyon, then to New York City. Next month I'm going to Paris, a trip Eleanor and I always dreamed of taking. I'm wearing new clothes, eating at nice restaurants, and leaving generous tips for service workers who remind me of my younger self. But some habits remain. I still track my expenses, I still invest wisely, and I still remember where I came from, because no matter how full your bank account, the most valuable thing you'll ever possess is your dignity. And that, unlike money, is something no one can take from you unless you let them. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in David's situation? To hear the next story, just click on the box on the screen. Thank you so much for listening today.